Hey folks, hope you're doing well. Ray Orsini, he talks about one aspect of his business, which is giving back to his community, how he's integrated that into his business and how it's impacted his company in some great ways. So slightly off topic from closing, so you can skip that initial part if you like. But I highly encourage you to watch it because it's great. And the other part is, what he believes is important for closing. So thinking about vertical specialization, being really narrowly focused, and also just talking about really building rapport with your prospects. So good talk with him. Thank you guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Well, Ray, thank you again so much for taking some time to chat with me today. If you can, just for the folks who may not be familiar with you and your company, do you mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background in the MSP space?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ray Orsini. I'm the CEO and founder of OIT VoIP. Started in the IT industry a little over 25 years ago. Started this version. This is my seventh business about 2010, 2011. Initially as a managed IT service provider in traditional sense, and then went into working with other MSPs, which I loved, and then started doing voice stuff with other MSPs, and then eventually went full into the VoIP space just so I could help MSPs, and I shuttered my MSP services a couple of years ago, and that's where we are today.
Wow. And so, and you said, how long did you have your MSP? Just to recap that period.
So, well, I've been doing IT consulting, IT services since the early 90s. But this iteration, the company started as Orsini IT, that was 2010. And that lasted, had a great run, had a lot of fun with it, got to do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of platform stuff, working with vendors. And then, so I ran that through 20. We still have some MSP clients today, but we stopped taking new MSP clients around 2016.
Okay.
That's when the decision was made.
Wow. Okay. Well, our audience are the folks who are still in that game, the MSP space, and so I would definitely love to hear more about your existing company. Maybe for the end of the interview, we'll definitely save some time to hear a lot more about that. The spirit of this chat, though, is a couple fold. One, as I was mentioning to you, Ray, before we started recording, was I noticed that for your company today that you have a section on giving back and a foundation, something to that effect. And I don't see that often and on MSP websites. So I was hoping just to hear more about what it is, why you do it, and of course how it may overlap potentially in the sales process, if at all. Because I don't think these things are done for those reasons, but sometimes they could potentially help. So that was part of the spirit of my question for my reasoning for wanting to chat with you. So we'd love to start with that, if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about that part of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I came up in the industry because of the giving of others. I was in Boy Scouts, I was in a bunch of groups. But specifically, I got in IT space because I was in a program called Big Brothers Big Sisters, where my mentor was an IBM engineer, and he took me at 8 years old. He would take me to jobs and contracts and have me working on stuff on satellite communications, mainframe stuff I had no business touching when I was 8 or 9 years old. I look at my 8-year-old now and I'm like, it's just mind-boggling to me. But he's the reason I got in the space, and we still stay in contact today. And so I always wanted to get into Big Brothers Big Sisters as I got older. Didn't work out that way. Had businesses that got created. I had my first daughter when I was 20. So I just never had the time for it. So when the time came where I could give back more meaningfully, I decided to do so with my company. So, we started with internships. We've been running internships since 2010, 2011. We run several very strict internship programs year round. I sit on a lot of boards for high schools and colleges, developing their IT programs so that the students that come out of these programs have marketable skills. It's not just something they learn in a book, but it's something that'll actually get them a job, which is the goal, right? And so, we've done stuff for other youth organizations, and just, it's something I've always liked giving back. Well, the decision was made in 2016, 2017 to solidify this more than just I'm doing things because I like doing it, and my wife believes in it too, and my whole family. It's just part of our ethos. We said, well, let's take it a little more seriously. Let's take it and make it a part of our business. This is part of our operating budget. We are dedicating these resources to this. So like anything else, we created a business plan around it. We created OIT Gives, which is our charitable organization, the charitable arm of the company. It's not just charities and special organizations that we care about. Not only our partners, the MSPs we work with and their clients, they're invited to recommend organizations we work with, but also our staff. Whether it's a Habitat for Humanity or a UNICEF or whatever happens to be. United Way is clients of ours far before we were, giving to them. And so we do this, and it's just created an avenue for us to give back in a structured fashion. We put stuff on the website not for marketing. It's meant so that people know that we're here to help. We took a theme a while back, and this is the reason we started the whole OIT Gives thing on the website, because before it was just word of mouth, talking to partners, hey, if you need help, we're here. But pre-COVID, I forget which hurricane it was. We looked, and there's another vendor in the space. Datto used to do this. I think they still do, where if you're impacted by a natural disaster event, they would go out and deploy their backup systems to get you back up and running. And they would do so at no cost. And I thought that's a brilliant use of resources for the betterment of the community. So I said, we can do the same thing, So we decided we're going to offer free voice services, no contract, no nothing. We cover the full cost. They can use soft phones, they can do whatever. But if you're impacted by a natural disaster, there's a sign up form on our website. Go ahead and use this, and you can, we'll give you service for as long as you need, because there's a lot of companies that have on-premises systems. They can't do call forwarding, or there's no soft phone, there's no nothing. So if the building is down, they're without business. And there's a lot of service businesses and stuff like that. So we decided to do that, and we put it on the website to make sure it was known. And then we did the same thing during COVID, and we called it OIT Ready, where a natural disaster comes up. There's no sales, but we don't even add you to our marketing campaigns. It's just you need help, you ask for help. You don't have to be a client. You don't have to be brought in by a partner. It's just, if you're there and you need help, we're here for you. And when you're ready to get back up, it's all yours. We help you migrate back off. There's no expectation of anything. And obviously we use partners to get the word out. But it's just kind of snowballed, and every year we look and we add to our budget for OIT Gives. I'm proud to say it increases by 5 to 15% per year, so we can always do more and more, and it's pretty awesome. We love doing it.
Wow. Well, and there's so much that you described in the process of getting to OIT Gives that I want to ask about. But I guess starting with sort of what has the response been within the community? What sort of like how much work do you guys typically have to put in for giving, helping a company get back up and running after disaster?
It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because, human nature, the first thing, anytime you say, I'm going to give you something, it's not going to cost you anything, and I'm doing it just to help. The first response is always, why? Why are you doing this? What are you getting at? What's the catch, right?
Sure.
And so we realized getting the message out there was the hardest part. Saying, this isn't a marketing thing. We're not trying to be sleazy. We're not trying to make money from you. We're not taking advantage of your situation. Just, we're here to help. That has been the biggest hurdle. So using our partners and our staff to, for their personal circles, using them to get the word out has been, had the largest impact. But that's why we solidified it as a business initiative. We had to do it to say, we're going to put marketing funds into this. We're going to put staff dedicated to this, because if we didn't, it could fall apart that quickly. And I didn't want to let something that had potential for good fall apart because of a lack of effort. So we structured around that. And it worked out really well. I mean, it's a significant amount of effort anytime we onboard a client. So to onboard a client that's not going to have any kind of revenue coming in for us, or a lot of times it's not like we bring on a voice client and we know they're prepared to provide documents like their copy of their bill, or they have an idea how they want call routing. This is an ER triage situation, right? They might not even have all of their phone numbers. They might not know how to get a hold of their phone company so they can forward numbers. So honestly, it's a lot more work when this stuff happens. we're used to this. I actually worked 10 years at the Miami Police Department in the 9/11 Center. I'm used to
Oh, wow.
emergency operations, so it's funny how many of those skills I was able to adapt to this, and business in general. But so we got very good at streamlining. I don't have a lot of information, but I need to get this done quickly. And honestly, they need to get this done so they can move on with the rest of their recovery, like getting their lives back in order. So, we develop processes around all of that. And it's a lot of work, but it has a lot of payoff. Personally and, business wise, the staff love it. And it's a great thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the staff, because if it's not really being, I mean, it's in your DNA, like it's a part of like your core values, your company's core values, which you instill, coming from you, and then it kind of, the company sort of evolved throughout. But like, it has to have some sort of business benefit. And I imagine with the people, tell me a little bit more, sort of what have you seen changed in your business in terms of the people since kind of implementing this? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, with OIT, our we have this, I hate to call it a tagline. It's welcome to the family, because, my wife works here, my daughter works here, I have my cousins that work here. All of our staff, there's almost 30 of us, they're extended family, right? They're, not blood, they've become part of the family as they join. But, when you have family, you have people you care about, you want what's important to them to be important to you. The staff needs to feel that way too. They need to feel like what's important to them, that we're supporting that as their managers and their bosses. And so saying, it's not for everybody. Not everybody comes to a job and says, I want to, back up this charitable organization. But for the ones that it's really important to them, and honestly, it's most of the staff, the ones that it's really important to them, it's a big deal that management is behind them to support the same initiatives. So as far as a culture thing, as far as staff, satisfaction, personal satisfaction, we take away that you can pick spending time at work or spending time with that nonprofit that you're working with, or spending time at home relaxing. We alleviate some of that, because we say, no, we're going to take your work time and we're going to allow you to get that outlet where you can help others, and you don't have to take away from your personal time to do it, because we're going to support you doing that stuff. And it's had immense payoffs, personally, spiritually, emotionally. It's been awesome.
Wow, that is awesome. I'm inspired. I imagine it's definitely a great way to bond with other folks who you're just working with day to day on technical projects, to have the opportunity to work on something more meaningful. So
oh, absolutely.
So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I think that personally, like, I don't have an MSP, but we have an agency. We're partners with MSPs, and I'm constantly thinking about what are ways that our MSPs can differentiate. And many times we talk about, oh, it's our people. We're in the community, and it's just great to kind of see an example in real life. And even if it's not being used within a marketing campaign or anything, I wonder if it's going in the back of some prospects' minds as they're evaluating which companies to work with, to see that you guys are actually giving back. I'm sure that it has some kind of an impact in that area. So, but
it does. I mean, roughly, I want to say 10 or 15% of the businesses we onboard eventually become, customers, just because they're already on and it's easy for them. That's not why we do it. The goal is really just to give back, plain and simple. So, and if it was a marketing initiative, if only 10% converted, that'd be a failure anyway. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy that it's the customers or the people are getting what they need out of it and moving on with their lives. But it does have ancillary benefits. I'm always a big proponent of, don't do anything for one reason only. Have multiple reasons to do stuff. I'm not going to lie and say there's not marketing benefit to it. There's not. Of course there is. People like doing things for companies they're proud to work with. That is very simple. People like working for companies they're proud to do business with, right? One of the things I tell partners all the time is, we're never going to put you in a situation where you have to apologize to your client for something that happened. That's just not our thing. I did that as MSPs, where working with other vendors, if another vendor would screw up, but as the MSP, you take responsibility for it. That's your job. You made the recommendation, you have accountability. And so I take my role in that, and I take our organization, we all do. we take our role in the relationship very seriously for the MSP, to not put them in a situation where they're going to have to apologize. But the inverse is just as true. When something's you can be proud of, you can share that across the relationship. These are the kind of people we're doing business with. That honestly, that adds a lot of credibility to the partners too, when they're working with clients, saying, this is a company that's not just that usual, we know what, there's always a vendor that comes to mind. When you say that greedy, corporate, evil company, there's always somebody that comes to mind. When you can say, no, this is a company that really cares, and this is how they show they care, that adds credibility to that partner that's trying to go out there to the market too, which, as an added benefit, not so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing with that, sharing with us on that. So shifting a little bit now to more on the closing aspect, which is what many MSPs are trying to get better at. We're all trying to get better at. Was hoping maybe you could share a little bit on sort of your background in running a sales process. Wherever you want to begin. Sometimes I start by asking, what was your sales process sort of in the beginning, in your earlier MSP days? Sometimes hearing the journey for how you started in sales. Or if you want to jump right to certain, one or two or three, things that you really move the needle. Where would you like to kind of start on that? Yeah.
So, in the beginning, it's funny because like in the beginning I had, because I had the other businesses, and I would sit there and I would talk to somebody, and I had this background in IT, and you'd start getting these referrals, right? And you think, okay, well, when you have referrals are very easy to close. When you're starting out, you don't realize that. You think, okay, well, somebody walked you in, and they already have a need that's presented, and I talked them into it, and I identified the problems, and we discovered, and we created a solution, and they bought in on it, and we closed. And you have this high close rate, and you think, I'm a superstar salesperson, I'm phenomenal, which is awesome until the referrals dry up, right? And then you're like, well, okay, well, let me do postcards, epic failure for me. Let me do cold calling campaigns, epic failure for me. Not because those things didn't work, but because I didn't know what I was doing with it. I had my experience in getting a referral, having a personal conversation, and closing. And it took me a while, and a lot of reading, and a lot of, trial and error, and a lot of classes, honestly, until I realized it's all about system. It's all about system, because one thing I have now with my sales teams, and, we practice this, I've practiced in other businesses, is sales in a service business is very, very, very simple. It is identify a prospect, get past a gatekeeper, discover the pain points, build a rapport with them, because if there's no rapport, there's no way you're going to do business in the service industry. Identify a solution, present it, have them buy into it, close the deal. It is that process every single time. And I don't care what system you run, that's what it's going to be. You can boil it down to those points. Once I realized those points were there, then it was, okay, the how. The how is probably harder than the what, right? And so I started working that system, and I'll be honest, that system evolves even today, even 10 years later. It's still a constant work in progress. But the point is, we build on those points, and we build the system to make sure we're hitting those points. And that gets us a higher return on close rates, right? On our conversions, which are the big deal. Something I realized early on too was it's all about the data. We have, and it's funny to tell IT people this. We have data, and to say, oh, we have data, but we're not using it properly is mind-boggling. When you look at your PSA, and I had gone from, PSA 1 to PSA 2 to PS 3, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get into this one's better than that one.
Yeah.
But, but the point was, I carried my data into each one, but I was meticulous about making sure the data was quality every time I migrated. And when I migrated to the new system, that quality followed, right? It was still the right categories, the right, verticals, whatever it was, I was making sure the data was correct. And then I was using that data. So when I identified a prospect, I said, okay, well, I'm really good at closing a referral because I already have built a rapport, because somebody else did a warm intro. They're establishing my credibility. It's ready to go. they have a pain point that's already identified, because if not, the person wouldn't be referring me. They've already said what their problem is. So I'm killing these two birds with one stone. I'm getting past the gatekeeper because they're walking me in the door. And
Right.
I'm like, this is okay. This is awesome. So then it's just create a solution and get them to buy in. And it was awesome. So I started working toward these systems where I could do the same thing. Well, getting past the gatekeeper is really hard. Yeah, building a rapport is really hard. Getting them to identify the pain points is really hard sometimes, because a lot of times they don't know what the pain points are, right? Or they're not articulating well. So I started defining my ideal client type. And I said, okay, well, I want a client that's in business at least 5 years. Why? Because a company in business over 5 years, they've passed that threshold where they might fail. They're operationally getting to maturity, or maybe mature. I want somebody that has a staff of at least 10 people. Why? Because you can't have 10 people on payroll and not have budgeted for payroll. It's impossible. If not, if they didn't have budgeted for payroll, they would have shuttered within 5 years. That's just the way it works out. I want somebody in a regulated industry. Why? Because they had to get licenses to be able to establish the business. They had to put the effort into it. A lot of these licenses, you have to have your insurances, you have to have your bonds, you have to have continuing education. So and they have some organization, and this was pre-HIPAA, pre-PCI, but they have some organization on their back saying you have to do these things. So now it's not even me presenting solutions. It's real estate saying you have to keep certain records for 5 years, or a brokerage that has to do 7 years, or title that has to do 7 years, or legal that has to do 10 years. And now we have data archiving, and now we have backup, and now we have retention and discovery. And so finding these kind of businesses, or ones that were actively marketing themselves, right? Do they have a billboard? Do they have a bus bench? Are they active in networking communities? Why? Because they want to go out there and they have a different class of, they want to have a certain appearance that things work. To them, they're actively investing in getting out there. And so if something doesn't work, if they can't do business, it's even more expensive, right? Because it's one thing to just run your day to day, and if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. That can be harmful. But if you're spending $10,000 a month on marketing, and now your calls can't come in, or you can't log that lead in your CRM, or you can't pull up their file because the internet was down, that's even more painful. So I looked for this category of business because I already had experience at it. And that helped me with the rapport part. That helped me with the gatekeeping. And so just developing these systems and making sure my data was accurate, that helped me with my close rates. It helped me far better than anything else. And we follow that process today. We have our ideal client and we hone in on that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there you talked through. I was nodding my head earlier when you were getting into the steps, especially the one around building rapport, because you're in the services business, and so much of it is about just liking the people that you may be working with for some time. And that's something that I haven't talked too much about with anyone in this series. So we'd love to hear more. I mean, some of these things may sound, obvious to someone listening to this, but for some folks, the idea of what exactly do you mean by building rapport? Any thoughts on how do you structure that, if any at all, how you approach that?
Yeah, and there's a fine line. I'm hyper conscious of trying not to make it sleazy, try not to be salesy. I want to really build a relationship, right? Because if you do it the sleazy way, if you do just there's mimicry, and there's taking and looking at their desk and starting looking for items, and create situations where you can talk about shared interests and stuff like that, and that's fine, that's great. Carnegie had an awesome book of how to I forget the name of the book, but
influence or something like that. I haven't read it.
I got to get to that one. Yeah.
Next book.
Yeah, it's a good book though. I read it. It's a good book. So but stuff like that. But you can do that, but that's only going to last so long, right? That's a sugar high.
2 minutes. Not even. It's nothing.
Right. But in the MSP, you're going to have constant battles, not battles with the clients, but you're going to have constant challenges and obstacles where you're going to have an operating budget, where you're going to have a hardware refresh every 3 or 5 years, where you're going to have an ERP uplift, or whatever you're doing. So you're going to have a solid relationship where you can go back and talk to that client, and they're going to see you as an equal. And that's the real catch. When you're building a rapport, it has to be, I'm talking to you as an equal. I'm a business owner. You're a business owner, and you don't have to be. It could be salespeople. It doesn't matter where, but it is. I understand the business and I understand your needs. Right? It's not. So what I like to do is when I walk in is I ask a lot of questions. Why? Because people like talking about themselves. Hell, I've been talking. I've been talking for 23 minutes. Right? I'm happy to talk about myself, but people like talking about themselves. And when you listen and you actually sit there and listen to what they're doing, they feel like they can open up to you. It's funny because it's one of those things that as they do it, they feel they can do it. It's a weird psychological thing. But you sit there and you listen to them and you take notes and you ingest what's important to them. And that's the first stage. Those are the first steps of saying, I'm hearing you, I'm understanding you, we're going to get to the shared goals. When you can take that and then you can reiterate back in your own words, you can say, I've digested this and I understand this is what you're trying to accomplish. You say you have problems because Sally's working on her computer and every day around 3:00 it's dog slow and she can't upload her TPS reports. And I get what you're saying, and we'll have a technological solution to it. We'll figure it out. But what you're saying is you need Sally to be productive the entire workday. You can't have stoppages, right? Because when Sally stops working, then Ken stops working, and Mike stops working. You need them to be able to do their jobs 24/7 or whatever their schedules are. I understand that. We can do that. And you start to build upon that. And when the client sees that you get it, you understand their business. And that's easier when you work a niche. That's easier when you work a vertical because they're going to have similar needs, right? Yeah. All gas stations are going to have the same thing. They're going to have logistics. They're going to have delivery. They're going to have payment systems. They're going to have stocking and inventory and staffing schedules. So when you pick a vertical, you start to understand the needs of that vertical. So it gets you that rapport that much faster because you know their needs before they even state them. And so you start to use all these indicators in your data and your CRM and your experiences with your other businesses, and you use that to build the relationship up front because you're trying to establish credibility. And once you've established that and you've established the peer relationship, then you can go building, and it's a constant thing, right? You can destroy a relationship just as easily as you can create it. So, you know, you have to make sure every day you're delivering consistently, and you work on that, and it pays off for both in the end.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about sort of the gas station example, like really understanding a particular vertical, because you'll come in with more intelligent questions, and they'll understand that you know about their business just based on the types of questions that you're asking them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I also thought that your point on picking growing companies or companies that are marketing themselves is a really interesting way to sort of like identify your ideal client profile. Is there anything, how do you go about finding like these companies? And maybe I'm kind of diverting the conversation from sales process to like prospecting a little bit and finding like that profile. But any sort of tips for MSPs out there that are trying to sort of find those? Because right now, like for example, we as vendor partner for sales and marketing, you know, we're spending a lot of time on LinkedIn Navigator. There's a lot of great filters on there for us to find, sort of like check all these boxes, like high growth, like employees are growing, these verticals, this location. But anything else that, anything
that data is more expensive the wider the net, right? Like if you say I want to do LinkedIn marketing and I want to put ads for everybody in this zip code, it's pretty damn expensive, right? Now, if you say, I want to focus on focus on law offices with a gross revenue of at least $5 million a year, and they've been in business at least 5 years and have at least 10 employees on LinkedIn, that becomes smaller and smaller, but it becomes cheaper to start marketing to them, which helps. I mean, I've heard the argument, you know, and I say this, I'm an MSP champion. I absolutely believe in the community. I want to shore them up, but I hold standards to the MSP community too. And one of the things I hear all the time is, I'm a new business. I need to take any business I can get. And I don't believe that. I absolutely don't believe that. I think that's absolute garbage. And the reason is simple. I have a 30-person company. If I want to get up right now after this interview and go play Call of Duty, I can do it because there's 29 other people doing their jobs, getting stuff done. When you're a one-person shop or you're a two-person shop or you're just starting out, your time is critical because you have the same 24 hours I have. So you need to make sure you're laser focused on what's going to drive revenue, right? 15% of marketing conversion for me is much different than 15% of marketing conversion for a small MSP. So you need to start determining, who do I service best? And I'm not saying you're going to hit it right the first time every time. That's not going to happen. But pick something. So walk down the street, look at Yellow Pages, look at your Info USA, whatever makes you happy, and say, this is somebody I can go look at and I think I could start servicing, and then start looking at other businesses like that and just pick a vertical and try. It is very much throwing spaghetti at a wall, but you're hyper focusing on a vertical at a time so that you can start honing your process. And if that doesn't work, you can move on to the next vertical, but you're going to have things you learned from the first one. So I think I think my point is less that it matters which vertical. I don't think it does. I think it's that you pick something, pick some niche that you can hyper focus on in the beginning.
Yeah.
I have a good friend up in Connecticut, and he's a smaller MSP. He's very happy. He's successful in his own right, but he came out of manufacturing. He did manufacturing before he did IT.
Right, manufacturing's
so
huge
he
in Connecticut.
understands.
Yeah.
It's huge, and he understands CNC machines, and he understands 3D design, CAD designs, and stuff like that. Stuff that goes over my head. Like he sends me 3D printed model, 3D model files that I can print behind me. Like he does the files because he's so much smarter than me. But he talks to these machinery shops or these manufacturing shops, and he can have conversations on their level because he has so much experience with it.
That's awesome.
So that's why you couldn't do that if he was saying, I'm going to do machinery and medical and vet and legal and real estate and education. You could never gain that kind of expertise. It doesn't happen. And if you look at large MSPs, if you look at the enormous ones, right, the UDTs, the Presidios, they have account managers and they have TAMs that are custom focused for each vertical. They have people that are subject matter experts, and their SDRs and their BDRs are custom tuned to that specific vertical, so they know exactly who they're going after and who to have the conversations with and how to have the conversations. Take that, learn from them, take the same knowledge that billion-dollar company has and put it to your own smaller MSP, but you can still take the same tools and adapt it and still be successful. If they can, why can't you?
Right.
And it's hard. I get that it's hard because you want to say, I'm going to throw a net to catch all the fish. But the truth of the matter is if you're a tuna fisherman, catching all the fish isn't really helpful.
I love that.
Tuna,
Yeah, that's a great saying. You fish down there? You're in Florida, right?
No, believe it or not, I'm your typical Floridian, so it means I never go to the beach. I love the water. I love being on a boat, but I don't do fishing. Yeah.
Beautiful down there. Got to get out there and fish. Well, hey, Ray, I know we're running up on time, but this has been, especially this last section. I mean, learning from the big boys of enterprise is doing certain things. They've spent a lot of time and money to come up with that approach. Why not apply their lessons learned right away as a smaller MSP? It makes a lot of sense. We'd love to list the last few minutes just to hear more about what you're doing now and your company today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm doing exactly what I just said the last 30 minutes. I took all the knowledge that I've had previously and I poured into this. I realized a long time ago, I really enjoy working with MSPs. I still consider myself an MSP, even though we don't sign any MSP clients, but that mentality is still there. So we are a voice provider now. We are a UCaaS provider that work predominantly with MSPs. That is our core focus, enabling them to sell our services either as a white label model where it's their brand using our infrastructure, our training tools, including sales training tools, so they can get out there to the market and be productive within 30 days, signing to selling and creating revenue, or a channel partner model where they're not ready to have it all under their name. They use our name and they still have the same control, but we still enable them and empower them to be successful in whatever markets they're in. So that's the 30 seconds pitch. Awesome.
Well, where can they learn more about your company, your channel program? Where can they sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So hit us up, oit.co. That's oit.co, not .com. If you go there, you'll see tons of information, including scheduling links. Feel free to hit me up. Always on Reddit, always on IT Pool Party, always on MRU or MSP Geek. I'm OIT Ray everywhere. Grab a conversation with me. Let's get to know each other.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll get to have you back sometime down the line. But thanks so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Take it easy. Bye.